It's the Final Word Daily, Day 2 at Hyderabad, India up against England. Adam Collins with you, Cam Ponsonby with us at the ground. He has the responsibility of summing up the day in 30 seconds for Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Go.
Congratulations, India. You've won the Test match. I hope you're very, very happy. I think this was a great example of where this series is today. I don't think England have had a bad day in terms of performing to their own ability. Unfortunately, they are faced with an opponent in the home location where they are simply phenomenal. India piled on the runs. They finished with a lead of 175. KL Rahul got 84. Ravindra Jadeja finishes the match unbeaten, nearing a second Test century. He might get there along with Axar Patel tomorrow. Just whenever England thought they had a little glimpse in the game, such as getting a wicket in the first over of day 2, India slammed the door shut. It was a fantastic display of batting and a very concerning day of it bowling for England.
Yeah, that's well subbed up, I think, for England, especially. Like the leads up to 175. India closed at 421 for 7. They made 302 runs today, India, losing 6 wickets. And yeah, sure, there's some profligate shots, I suppose you could say, if you wanted to be critical. KL Rahul should have made 100, although he could have been out in the first over of play, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Correct.
Jaiswal doesn't go on to complete what would have been a fabulous 100 after closing last night on 74. But Jadeja's still there on 81, batting with Axar. It's like I said yesterday that it reminded me of the Pune Test of 2017. Today reminded me of Nagpur last year, a test that I was covering and doing commentary for, where Axar and Jadeja, when they batted together, they completely sucked the life out of the Test match for the touring bowlers. They just couldn't penetrate, and that's what they were able to do today across the last 90 minutes or so. That unbeaten stand of 63 has meant that there is really no route to victory for England now. This Test match is purely a case of trying to preserve what they can. The improbable chance of them drawing it, they won't. It'll be all over tomorrow. That scoreboard pressure will weigh heavily on their shoulders, and the chance for India to lay a massive blow. And this is the quintessential Indian playbook when batting second. You bowl the team out on day 1. You bat all day on day 2, provided the conditions allow, and they certainly have here so far. You make the overseas spinners who've rocked up, you make them look like they're a level below where they need to be. You put them under immense pressure, and by the end of the first Test match, the side's reeling who's rocked up, and they've been doing this for over a decade now. They're so good at it.
Yeah, I think something that really sums up the golfing class between the two spin units is of England's 7 wickets today, or 7 wickets of the innings, only one is from a batter missing the ball. Yeah. Everyone else has just chipped it up into the air, absolutely smoked it. And you compare that to what we were talking about yesterday, and we're going through all these sublime deliveries from Bumrah or Axar Patel, and they were beating England's batters. Today, Indians' batters were beating themselves eventually, almost kind of getting bored, where they're like, well, I'm going to take a risk. Shreyas Iyer today got caught out on the fence. A Rayan Ahmed kind of short delivery that was caught by Tom Hartley. There was absolutely no reason for him to do it. And I know that sounds like very retrospective and kind of reactionary. Oh, why have you played a bad shot, etc., etc., etc. But they were in such complete control for the majority of the day. It was such a kind of aberration, such a surprise when a wicket did fall. And it's such a shame for England because it seemed like they turned a corner, not necessarily through their own doing, but Joe Root opened the bowling today, having not bowled at all yesterday, and had Jaiswal caught and bowled, I think, off the second ball of the day. And then a couple balls later, KL Rahul got a thin nick that just kind of brushed Ben Foakes' gloves. And you're in the context of day 1 having seen things happen quickly, and so you're expected to see things happen quickly again. But when India are batting, things happen slowly. The runs are a steady stream. There's sixes when there are sixes, there are boundaries when there are boundaries, but it was a huge, the overall arching sentiment I found today was one of control, where you just realise how different these two teams are. And Jeetan Patel was just speaking after play, a great indication of when a day hasn't gone well for a team when the coach comes out. And he was incredibly positive, but I also believed him when he was saying, I think we actually bowled all right. I can't fault our effort. I think we've really given it a good go today. And I thought, Jeetan, you're 100% correct. I couldn't fault a single England player for shirking it, for not performing as close to their ability as possible, but they'll face with an opposition that is just that much better in quality. We've got 4 more tests of this. Can't wait.
Yeah. Look, that's a generous interpretation from where I'm watching it. I don't think they bowled as well as that. I think that they don't have presence, the England spinners, and they're not helped by the fact that Jack Leach has got a knee niggle, right? So Leach wasn't able to bowl longer spells today, which they would have wanted from him. He still ends up bowling 25 overs, but in more shorter bursts through the first 2 sessions when they needed to run through India. And they couldn't go bang, bang, right? It took until wicket 6 and 7 when they finally got 2 quick wickets. And then let's go to the end of the day, then the start of the day, the very end of the day, where Akshar was happy just to soak up dot balls as he does so well. And then finishing the day, just reminding Tom Hartley of who's boss. 4-6-4, down the ground, over cat corner. It was a punch in the nose to finish. And, I mean, is there a better Test number 9 than Akshar Patel? Every time I seemingly watch this bloke play Test cricket, he's walking in at 9 and strumming a half century, as I'm sure he'll go on to do tomorrow. They end the day that way. Having started the day, it was 6 and out, wasn't it, from Jaiswal to start proceedings against Joe Root?
He went over the top to Joe Root.
Four and out. Sorry, it was that frenetic start, and England did they opened the window up a little bit, right? They took wickets at 80 and 123 and 159. If they get on a roll there, then they are in a position where they're not going to get a first innings lead, but they might be able to manage the damage. But where I felt they were let down today, and I don't want to be hypercritical of 2 new spinners, but just the bare facts of the fact that Rayan Ahmed and Tom Hartley bowl way too many 4 balls. And there's more latitude for Rayan Ahmed because he's a leg spinner. There's that natural acceptance. It's a tactile craft for his spin. You are going to bowl more half-trackers and full tosses by dint of the fact that you're doing something that's incredibly difficult. Finger spinners don't have that latitude. And when Hartley does it, they are climbing into him. Now, I know he went for fewer runs today than he did for yesterday per over, and he did find a bit of a groove, and he did get that first wicket, so monkey off the back there with Shubman Gill caught by Duckett at cover, wasn't it? Or it might have been mid-wicket. Either way, in the ring, when they speak. But he wasn't able to, I don't think anyway, build pressure over overs. And that's the stark difference to the other 3 bowling yesterday. Ashwin, Jadeja have made an art form of building so much pressure on batters. They give them so little to hit without taking risks that it always feels like they're in the game for a wicket. There weren't many passages of play today where I was watching and thinking, gee, England are building the sort of pressure that the wicket's going to fall. It was the other way, where India, as you described nicely before, were taking risks when they didn't really need to, and that was ultimately the reason why KL Rahul doesn't complete the second home 100. There's that disparity with KL Rahul that he makes most of his test runs or most of his test tons in different countries. And he missed out today, caught in the deep.
Yeah, I'll rephrase slightly my kind of assessment of England, in that I think a good summation is they had the Ben Folkes edge in the first over of the day, where KL Rahul's just got a tiny feather on it. Very difficult chance. There's a debate about whether you can count it as a chance, but he goes on to score 80. Shubman Gill sticks one up in the air. Ben Stokes completely loses it. A theme of the match, to be honest. Rayan Ahmed's been doing the same. I've been doing the same from the stands. Obviously not as important when I can't see the ball. And then Joe Root got Jadeja LBW, or not given, three reds. England lost all their reviews. That's actually not that many things that go wrong for an England team. That's not you can't really go at the end of the day and go, if those 3 things had gone our way, then it would be a different match. But those 3 things didn't go England's way, and this is how far they are behind as a result. For England to compete, they need absolutely everything to go right, and I think that's the kind of stage of the match that England are in, and they're kind of how fine a balance they're striking in terms of how perfectly everything has to go in order for them to perform can be seen in their bowling attack. Yes, they've got a 5-man bowling attack with Joe Root, who was arguably the best bowler today, the most threatening spinner. But as soon as you lose Jack Leach, who's no longer able to bowl these long spells, remember he's been out for 7 months with a stress fracture in his back. He's now got a knee problem as well, which bodes terribly. Your kind of banker spinner is only bowled, I think he bowled 2 4-over spells in the day and bowled a lot of 2-over spells. So you can't rely on him as your banker. That means you have to go to Tom Hartley, who's in his first test match, is bowling a 4-ball too often and has gone at 5s across 25 overs. He all of a sudden has more pressure on him. Your seamer isn't James Anderson or Ollie Robinson, who could bowl long, arduous, kind of tight spells. It's Mark Wood. So you've got another person who's only bowling short, sharp spells, and then you've got the leg spinner. There's nowhere to hide or turn for England in this scenario. As soon as one piece of the jigsaw puzzle in this match went, the house of cards fell, which is a disgusting, horrible, twisted double analogy, but it was all I could think of in that moment of time. So England, I don't think they've been that far away from playing as well as they can do, And the problem with that is it ends up being the end of day 2 with a 175-run deficit.
Yeah, their ceiling isn't low, England, but they need a lot to go right. They need everything to go right, as it kind of did when they needed to win games in Pakistan. Very different circumstances, but when they needed to win games, they managed to sequence things quite nicely, like the way in which they won with, half an hour to spare with one game and maybe a couple of overs to spare with the other, the first 2 tests of that series. And remember who was so important to that? Well, 2 guys, Ollie Robinson and James Anderson, who are both on the tour, both not playing. So, yeah, I reckon there'll be a recalibration of England's attack regardless. And Jack Leach's knee niggle is more serious, and if it is going to pose some threat to him playing next week at Isaac, then I think that they'll see fit to pick a controlling seamer, and they'll have to dance with the one that brung them when it comes to Tom Hartley, and they're just going to have to hope that he finds greater comfort at the bowling crease through this series. Yeah, and he did create some chances today, but yeah, it's less about that for me. It's more about how many opportunities he gives them to release, and that's what you don't get from India's course.
To kind of, I'm thinking out loud here, but just when you talked about referred back to the Pakistan series last year, what England did incredibly well out there is how creative and imaginative they were in finding ways to victory. They kind of created a new blueprint that hadn't really been followed before. I'm thinking specifically about the first test in Islamabad, where they opened the bowling and just bowled bumpers for the first, 6 overs, with the sole purpose of roughing up the ball, getting it to reverse, and they had such a set plan, and they came out and they're like, this is how we're going to win this match. And then they did the same in kind of the follow-up with, they picked Ryan Ahmed for the 3rd test. They were kind of very creative in their thinking. Out here, yes, they've gone with a rogue selection in 3 spinners and just the 1 seamer, but it is kind of leaning further and further into just, right, we're in India, it's spin, so we're going to beat India at their own game, as opposed to kind of finding their own route through. I was sat next to an Indian journalist today, and he just went, it's not how you do it out here. Like, you can't just come over here and say you're going to spin to win. And I think that's been shown by the fact of this surface. It has spun a lot, but it's been consistent spin. It's never been a case where, oh my goodness me, no one knows what it's doing. It's doing the same, it's doing what you're expecting, it's just doing a lot of it. And so we have that kind of scenario in play where England are trying to beat India at India's game in India, which is just just fantastically difficult task, as is being evidenced and has been evidenced for forever.
Yeah, the pitch is doing as it should, right? It's turning a lot, turning consistently. It's not going through the surface. I saw some people complaining that we even mentioned the pitch yesterday and Bumrah getting one to break back as far as it did. It's just to simply acknowledge that there is something in this track for when you're running your fingers down the seam, if you can get it right.
Yeah.
But it isn't exploding through the surface. Where there was criticism of Indian pitches last year, especially at indoor, it was a lottery because it wasn't consistent bounce. It was variable bounce with balls exploding through the surface. That's not what's going on here. So, settle on that front. No one's saying that this is the great pitch stitch up or anything like that. It's just a function of the fact that it has been designed to turn, and it is turning so far. So far, so good on that front.
Right.
Just going to India and how well KL Rahul looked. To think he was dropped from this Indian test side a year ago when he was opening. He was left out for, I think it was the 3rd test match against Australia after a long run of low scores. Today was cash-in day, I reckon, for India, with all that pressure on England's young attack and the dint that Jaiswal put into them yesterday, and the fact they were already careering towards a first-innings lead. This is probably the day they've been waiting for to fill their boots, because they have had to play on a lot of surfaces, and Pujara said this when we interviewed him on the Final Word last year. Often they are caught on pitches in India where they are never in a position to apply a lot of pressure back, because they've always got to be mindful of the conditions. Today wasn't like that. They could have, KL Rahul could still be batting. He looked magnificent. I know he got dropped early on.
It's awesome.
And that folks' chance, just to go back to that, off spinner round the wicket, Joe Root, who does go on with the arm quite nicely, has one of the better arm balls going, actually, Joe Root, for he's declared a part-timer by designation, but he's bowling better than that at the moment. Has done over the last couple of years, I'd say. But yeah, if that edge is pouched by Folkes, he's one of the few keepers in the world who can take those, right? Like, Folkes' ceiling is extremely high for a gloveman. It almost feels like more of a drop. Bairstow may not even glove it because he's a far inferior keeper to Folkes. And that's not having a crack at Bairstow, it's just acknowledging how good Folkes is. But that goes in, and it might be a different morning session, but Rahul makes the most of that. Top scoring so far with 86, couple of big sixes in consecutive balls, I think it was. The 8 boundaries as well, and went on song KL Rahul is such a glorious player to watch. That thrust through point, it felt like I was watching Damien Martin. It was a defensive prod, no more. But the timing was so splendid that it raced to the rope. So, I'm glad to see KL Rahul batting well. I hate it when he often feels to me like the fall guy. When India are playing poorly, there's a lot of criticism of KL Rahul from the cheap seats. But I love when he is on song, how graceful he makes the game look. It's an energy thing.
So India have a kind of selection dilemma coming up at the moment, because it's the first time today that KL Rahul was batting at number 4 for India in his 50th Test match, and he's warming Virat Kohli's seat. And I was messaging a couple of mates, kind of Indian fans, and I was going, okay, so when Kohli comes back, who drops out? Especially if Rahul had got a ton. He was kind of going, the sentiment is, and I'm sure the comments will be able to weigh on this as well, like, it's a split sentiment between should it be Shreyas Iyer or should it be Shubman Gill, and actually it's a bit of a favour to India, obviously all caveats included, about that Kohli is away for another Test match, because it gives you another Test match for someone to not score runs or someone to score runs. And so that'll be a really interesting kind of storyline that will happen over the following couple of weeks, because Shubman Gill is like Cam Green, the anointed boy wonder, and Shreyas Iyer probably got a slightly stronger record. I'm sure I'll be correct on that if that's incorrect. But I've got a confession which I probably shouldn't make. In terms of, I'm a sucker for watching bowlers, and often innings can just pass me by. If I feel like someone's batting well, I kind of go, I've middled it again, have you? And that's kind of, I caught myself today when KL Rahul got to about 70. I went, oh shit, he's actually batting really well. I need to pay attention to this, because I was getting excited by Tom Hartley bowling to a 7-2. I was getting excited by Joe Root bowling round the wicket to a 3-6 field. I was thinking, what are the plans here? How's KL Rahul going to score his runs? And it turned out he scored it exceptionally easily, because they were just they were calm and competent runs. They weren't frenetic runs. If Ollie Pope scores runs, you know about it, because he's played about 17 shots before the ball arrives. But KL Rahul was kind of calm and personified in an innings which will be of a lot more importance to him than in the context of the match, if that makes sense. There's more riding on it for him to perform, given he's got a kind of a small window of opportunity to impress, than it would do for, say, for instance, I don't know, KS Bharat or whatever. He didn't bat as well. I did notice him batting today, missed it a lot. I don't know why KS Bharat and Ollie Pope just received a bit of abuse from me, but there we go. It's fine. I love them both dearly. But
I was pleased to see
very well batted.
Bharat getting in was good. His top scoring Test cricket's 44. He made 41 today, out sweeping to Root. Just back to Gill and Shreyas.
That was so out.
Say again, sorry.
It was the most out LBW I've ever seen in my life. We were all 100 yards away in the press box, and we went, that looks really out, and it came up on the TV, and before anything had happened, like, there was like a laugh. People laughed in terms of like that. I've never seen anything that's so certain to hit the stumps in my life than this LBW appeal. And we were proved correct. 3 reds.
Yeah, so Root got one to break back from around the wicket there. But the Gill Shreyas Iyer thing, both of them have missed a chance here. Strange innings from Gill in a way, because he walked in yesterday when it was all guns a-blazing and chose to play conservatively through to the close. Wasn't able to add considerably to his overnight score. He finished with 23 from 66, but having seen him play, the way we've all seen him play in white ball cricket, but also in Test cricket at Brisbane famously in 2021 in that chase when he was the one putting the pressure back on the Australians in only a second Test match. And that 100 Ahmedabad that we saw last year against Australia as well, albeit on a flatty, where he was able to really dictate terms. He never really dictated terms today, so maybe a little bit out of nick. As for Shreyas, caught on the rope, Rayan Ahmed gets himself in the book. Look, Shreyas is in the side having overtaken Rahane, right? And that's a considerable decision, strategic decision. They parted ways with Pujara and Rahane on the basis of low runs of form, but 2 proven match winners nevertheless. So at some stage it needs to flip for Shreyas Iyer. He needs to become in Test cricket what he's already become in white ball cricket. So maybe a missed opportunity today, but I mean at the end of the day we're talking about a side that's racked up 421 for 7. They'll bat on tomorrow. Jadeja will have the chance to post 3 figures again. Just on Jadeja, before we have to get towards the end of this podcast, it's dragging on a wee bit today. He's now reached 50 on 23 occasions in Test cricket, so 3 centuries and and the others all half centuries. And what a tremendous 3 or 4 years he's had as a genuine Test all-rounder. That dependability of him batting at 6 and allowing India to play the extra bowler. It's a wonderful situation for them to be in. If to offer a controversial view, I think when Jason Gillespie rode the horse upon reaching 50 for the first time in Test cricket, he did it a couple of other times. That was funny because it was a novelty, because he was a bowler making runs down the list. Jadeja and the sword, it's not a novelty. He's a fabulous cricketer. He doesn't need to do the Zorro sword thing anymore. That was funny 4 or 5 years ago when he didn't have this bank of runs the Test class. I know he's made triple hundreds at first class level, but I think he can put the sword away. I don't think it needs to be an event every time Jadeja passes 50. He's passing 50 so often. Yeah, that's where I'm landing on this. I'm sure I'll cop some grief for saying that.
You say that, and
I think the sword.
You say that, but having been here today, there was a massive. He was on 49 forever, for so long, and he was also given out LBW on 49.
Given out,
and he reviewed it immediately. 2 great reviews from Jadeja. I think he was given out twice, and the first time, I can't remember who the bowler was. It might have been Root as well, and he was ready to review before the finger went up. He was like, I dare you to give me out here, because I promise you I've hit this or not hit this or whatever. But he reaches his 50. The massive cheer goes around the ground. The crowd was wicked. I want to go and come back to that in the Hall of Fame. But you get the initial cheer that he'd made reached 50. You got a second cheer because Stokes had misfielded the ball. Then you got a third cheer because it was like, oh, they've got 3 runs rather than 1. And then facing the dressing room, he gets the sword out, and there's this fourth, the loudest cheer about 30 seconds after the main event had happened. And it was so exciting. It was so much fun being here. Granted, if it was at like the Aegeus Bowl, it might not have the same effect. But my compromise with you is he's allowed to do it in India, but he's not allowed to do it away from home unless there is a significant Indian fan base in the ground, at which case I would enjoy the noise that is made.
Yeah, well, India don't play away games, as Harsha Bhogle famously said after the 1999 World Cup all those years ago. Well, the last time they played away games was the 99 World Cup, I think is how Harsha puts it. But yeah, I'll clarify my position. Sword fine when he makes hundreds, as he will be making more of, because he's such a brilliant player. Tomorrow will be the chance for him to get it out, I'm sure. Okay, now Cam, time for us to move on to the Final Word Hall of Fame. Final Word Hall of Fame, I've been reading the ad copy before. I sometimes like to do it fresh, but I did read this beforehand. Sheehan's setting a very high bar here. He's doing a very good job.
It's a long series.
He's got to sustain this across 5 Test matches. Let me begin. We've all heard the story of Roy Park, he says. This is the guy who played a Test match in, I think it was just before World War I, if memory serves me correctly. And his wife was knitting when he walked out to bat for the first time at the G. And she dropped her knitting needles and looked down and went down to pick them up, and it was the only ball. He got bowled first ball. It was the only ball he faced in Test cricket, and his wife missed it because she dropped her knitting needles. So goes the story. And this is where our story here begins today. He was straight in and straight out, and now, over 100 years later, is your chance to role play as the Roy boy himself and get in and out of somewhere so quickly that a distracted loved one might miss you. W Park is the smoothest and smartest way to park your car on your next visit to Westfield shopping centres in the UK. Download the app, register your car, and you can park the hassle when you park your car. The system will recognise any number plate you register, and the barriers will open for you so you can drive straight out without having to wait in line. I actually did this at a Westfield in Australia over Christmas. I was in Geelong, down at the Cattery, doing some Christmas shopping, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, where do I pay? What do I do? And it recognised my number plates. Piece of piss. How good's that? Download W Park on Google Play or the App Store today. Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Cam, your final word moment of the day.
My final word moment of the day was, so today is Republic Day. It's a national holiday in India. And in the stands today, to the left-hand side of where I was sat, it's just banks and thousands of school children. And to the right, it was families and grown-ups, effectively. And on the left-hand side, the school children started up a chant for India, and it started echoing around the stadium. And then the right-hand side kind of followed suit, but just a little bit, just slightly out of time. And what was really great about it is the side on the right-hand side was just an octave lower than the one on the left. And so you had this kind of like weird, 2 very distinct chants happening at the same time. It was such an amazing kind of moment of atmosphere. And I absolutely loved it. It was a moment where I went, yes, I'm really happy and very lucky to be here. And so quite a wholesome moment, kind of Hall of Fame for me today.
Nice, Cam. Mine's sort of wholesome too. I think for a time, third umpires were told to stop using umpires' nicknames out in the middle. So it was quite a big thing, wasn't it? Good decision blocker, or whatever it was. Today, the third umpire addressed Paul Rifle as pistol. I thought that was nice. So more of that, please. Someone who probably played against Paul Rifle, James Anderson. No, they didn't quite cross over. They nearly did, though, and Pistol's about 60 now. Jimmy was bowling left-arm spin, as he always does. When with Jack Leach, he's got a lovely action. It's a very fluent left-arm orthodox action.
He does.
Get him on. Get Ben Stokes into the attack too, by the way. Bowled all those off breaks with Jeetan Patel during the summer. I know his legs like being held together with sticky tape, but put him in a harness.
It's not fit, Adam.
Put him
He's
in like
not fit.
Put him in like the equivalent of like the sex swing, and just like have him like rotate the arm over and rip it. That's what I want to see. Ben Stokes in a sex swing bowling off breaks by the end of the series.
I've been waiting months for you to bring up a sex swing on the podcast. I've been waiting months for that.
Yeah, well,
I was finally. I know that we can go there. We're back tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I've never used that term before. May never again, but I have now on my podcast. Here we go. But Jimmy was wearing. Jimmy was like, they were all focused on a screen watching something. I don't know, they were probably watching Jimmy Anderson wicket highlights on YouTube or something. But he's not wearing the traditional speed dealer sunglasses or athletic sunglasses, you might say. There was no danger of Jimmy running out there and being the 12th man today. He was just feet up, doing his thing. And yes, I did like the optics of Jimmy watching himself on the big screen, wearing the sunglasses, knowing he was the point of conversation on television. And he'll get his chance again next week, I am pretty sure. Cam, I think we've done everything. We've gone for nearly half an hour. We need to be more disciplined. Tomorrow, we will get this podcast back to 20 minutes, I promise you. And we've got another episode of The Daily coming out from Brisbane at almost the same time. Bharat's got Adam White with him, I believe, making his final word co-hosting debut. I hope they talk about the fucking Bales. You haven't seen it, Cam? Alex Carey bowled.
I have seen it.
It would have been about 6 for 60. The West Indies' best chance to win a test match in Australia since 1997. Hey, nothing to see here. I got told repeatedly last week, it's not really a thing, it's funny, it's quirky. It's not. It's fucked. But I hope they talk about it later.
But if the Bales are there to tell you if the balls hit the stumps, and we use technology to say if the balls hit the stumps, do you need the bells anymore? Because the bells don't need to be there.
You do because the convention is the stumps have become bigger owing to the bails. With DRS technology, we accept the bails are part of the stumps. We keep them. They're nice.
Right.
Use them for run-outs, whatever. Just bowls.
Okay.
Where I get shitty as bowls. Anyway, that's a conversation for Baz and for Whitey. That's the end of our chat. Cam, I hope you've got a lovely evening planned, doing something social, being a good tourist.
We'll work it out.
Dinner.
Always a good tourist.
Somewhere nice.
I think it'll be dinner somewhere nice with most likely Vidushan Hantharajah talking about the final word. There we go.
Oh, that's great. A dear friend of the show and occasional co-host Vidushan Hantharajah. Right, that's us done. For Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary, this has been the Final Word Daily. Talk again tomorrow.